I hand it over to our designated host for this panel. Please welcome with me here on stage. Let me introduce all of them. You can have a seat, and I'll drop the names if I may. Ladies first, Miriam Neubauer, Managing Director at Catena Capital, Jochen Metzger, Director General Payments and Settlement Systems bei Deutsche Bundesbank, und Thorsten Weigl, CEO bei Solom. And your host for this panel is Dr. Michael Gebert. Okay.
So we're talking about the future of money, and the future of money, of course, involves always a little bit or even a lot of emotions. Because money is what drives industries, money is what drives companies, money is what drives countries, money is what drives ourselves on a daily basis. So it is so important to understand, if we talk about cryptocurrencies, that money in a new way of thinking could be a revolution also in a new way of living, in a new way of interacting, and in a new way of intersocial interacting. So first of all, we heard a little bit about the background of Bitcoin and how Bitcoin evolved out of a crisis 2007, 2008. And I would very much be interested in how many of you guys already might have a wallet or some Bitcoins or any other cryptocurrency that they use to invest or that they hold in terms of a wallet. So please be so kind to give a hand sign who holds any kind of cryptocurrency in a wallet. It could be a cold wallet. All right. So that's about, I would say, 2.3%. It's not so much. All right. So this is a very good indicator for our topics, of course, how deep we dive and how deep we really want to tell you what is going on. So let's start with not only the small introduction, but with a little bit of background, because you have to be aware that we are now, in terms of, we're writing a little bit of a history here on stage, because on the one hand, we have I would say, of course, younger, but also open generation on not only being crypto, but living crypto on a daily basis. Then we have the investor side, who, out of some curiosity, we will hear about it, was eager to join this journey and to go full throttle into crypto. And then we are very proud to also have a director status and a director from the Bundesbank on stage, telling us not only his views on a personal side, but also, of course, maybe give us a little bit of an outlook what's going on in the future and how an institution that is so important for a country like Germany, like the Bundesbank, is developing on that issue. So let's start, maybe, ladies first, of course, with you. Why are you into that whole sphere, and who are you? Who are you that you are sitting here and being so prominent and so knowledgeable in that very young field of experience?
Does this work? Yeah, okay. I'm Miriam. I'm the Managing Director at Catena Capital. We are a Berlin-based blockchain accelerator and invest into token sales via a syndicate structure, basically. Myself, I've always been fascinated with what moves the world not today or tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow, and kind of thinking about alternative ways of how systems and value is organized. And personal story is I tried to buy stocks and asked the bank for a loan in the beginning of my studies, which I studied in business and computer science, and they didn't want to give me a loan. And I failed at finding out how to buy stocks, and public keys and private key handling was very familiar to me, and smart people were talking about how not really Bitcoin, but already back then about the underlying technology can solve some of the world's biggest problems. And that was my way into it, and did some other things, normal startups over the last few years, and with Ethereum becoming so big and it became clear that it's not mobile or cloud that will kill our businesses or industries, but it's the blockchain, and so we that's when it became more prominent again, and we founded Catena Capital based on the belief that maybe the future of money, maybe the future of value, which this whole crypto tokens thing is to me. This rethinking is now more bigger than ever.
Thank you. Then we have you as a representative on the investor side, coming from what I understand, a very special space out of the internet trading domains, which has by definition no value in the beginning and then gets into the thousands or millions. So you have a little bit of background of how to handle value out of, I would say, aggressively thin air, right? So how did you get into that business, and what is your background that now drives you so far into investing into ICOs, into new currencies on the crypto side?
Thanks. Very excited to be here on this panel, and I have to really go back to the parents, actually. My parents, they come from the real estate business, and real estate business is making something out of land, which is our earth where we live on. So that was my background. And in 1996, I started out to be self-employed, to start my own business. And I figured out what is on the internet, the parallel to the land or the real estate, and I figured out it's domain names. So I started to invest in domain names ever since. And luckily enough, in 2011, I had a telephone call I will never forget with someone from New York. And we were talking about stocks, actually. And he had no stocks to recommend for me, but he said, this late summer, I was at a conference. It was a Bitcoin conference. I said, what is it? Bitcoin, I've never heard of that. And he said, it's 21 million, it's scarce, and it's digital. And that was my beginning of falling down what we call in the crypto scene, the rabbit hole. I started for 3 months to read everything and to talk to everybody that I met here in Munich. I met 3 people here that started out in Giesing in a pub, what they call a Crypto and Stammtisch. And that was my beginning in this space. I stayed with the space. I invested in the space, and I follow every new development that is happening here. So ICOs is a topic. Other cryptocurrencies is a topic, and this is my profession and my enthusiasm. But it's not this enthusiasm about being just an investor. With my heart, somebody starting in 1996 and seeing what big internet companies did to our ecosystem, I believe in freedom of speech. And this drives me, supporting the community here in Munich and the Bitcoin community, because I think currencies, cryptocurrencies, enable us, as we heard before from Daniel, to be free people again and not having only fiat currencies, which are forced upon us as being German citizens to have a euro. We are free now again to have cryptocurrencies, and we have the freedom of choice again. Thanks.
So you're not only driven by return and invest, you have a greater course to follow,
right,
to free the world, basically. Right? All right. You know, this is very passionate, of course, and it is a mission to start. Somebody has to do it. Now we kind of go to a little bit on the next level, I would say, because if you have followed the reporting on the World Economic Forum in Davos this year, you might have seen that anything on blockchain and anything on crypto was really one of the hot topics. I had a conversation with somebody who told me it was a number 2 topic. Number 1 was Trump. So this is something to be near this negative hype with a positive hype, which is good. So, and also Consensus, one of the companies doing a lot of crypto stuff in the crypto industry, was right next to a pillar, or was right next, has this tent right next to a company who is officially doing the standard business in terms of currency. So there was already kind of a battle between who will, in the future, maybe dominate the game. So I was wondering, First of all, what is your history coming out of a construct that is normally not so well known to the outsider? And what is your position within that construct? Over the years, you developed on, I think, 20, 25 years minimum in this construct, onto new innovation, what you have seen over time, and now crypto.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Grüß Gott, München. My name is Jochen Metzger. I'm Director General Payment and Settlement Systems at Deutsche Bundesbank. And my day-to-day job is operating payment and clearing systems, first and foremost in Germany, but also in Europe, in Euroland. And I'm also overseeing and monitoring payment systems, payment instruments, and payment innovations at large. We are very open-minded at the Bundesbank. We look and see. We want to understand what's going on. And we are following payment innovations ever since. And of course, cryptocurrencies, or I should maybe say crypto tokens, they have a payment quality to them. And this is what, let's say, interested me in the first place. So I asked my staff to have a look, to see what's going on there, to look at Bitcoin, to look at Ether, at Ripple, from the angle of payment quality. Can they be used to make payments? Retail payments, cross-border payments, cross-currency. So this was what got me into this business. And seeing this, there was also the idea to say, okay, we do not only need to see and try to understand by analyzing, we should also be doing it. So we started a project together with Deutsche Börse. How can we use blockchain to make security settlements more effective, more efficient? And with a bit of luck, we should be able to have a prototype by summer this year that we can really test, where we can make performance tests, i.e., does the system really allow for 500,000 transactions a day with 200 counterparties throughout Europe? We want to know whether this works better with blockchain or whether the conventional technology has still an edge.
Thank you. I want to get to that point where you say you work together with the Deutsche Börse, because one of the things that the Deutsche Börse is doing is they're having an accelerator program. Yeah. And interesting enough, one of the accelerators coming out of this program is a German company called SafeDroid. And SafeDroid is an interesting company because it really matches our topic here. They just had a very, very successful initial coin offering, what we refer as ICO. So they basically generated a new coin that has a small version SVG and SVD, and basically then they issued the coin and people bought it. I'm not quite sure about the amount of numbers, but we are talking about double-digit million numbers that they raised. So how do you think in terms of a regulatory body, because it's money that is involved, is it a status quo that is good for the industry that we have right now with the BaFin in Germany? Or is there might be a chance to really look into the Switzerland regulation with the Crypto Valley and the FINMA that they do there? So what do you think about regulation? Is it a good bet to invest just out of regulation, not the risk and the sustainability of the business model, just out of regulatory view to invest in something like an ICO?
With the ICOs, I'm having my difficulties. This is my personal opinion. For me, they are very close to, let's say, to fraud. This may surprise you that I have such a harsh view, but I've seen too many things that actually, let's say, went that direction. Taking a more, let's say, a more official, a more regulatory, a more kind of overseer type of position, I would say, okay, as long as we are talking about private placements, as long as this is not a general offer to the general public, i.e. to, let's say, everybody who is willing and able to invest, we can, let's say, we can let that go, we can let that slip. But the very moment you really offer this type of, let's say, coins to the general public, I guess the investment regulation has to be observed. This means, let's say, you need a license in order to do so. You have to follow certain principles. You have to keep the assets separate. Everything has to be well documented. You have to go the full Monty, in my view. And at the moment, we're in somewhat like a gray area. I would not perceive the problem so big that, let's say, the regulators have to come in with the squad team and, let's say, shoot everybody down. No, it's not that bad. But let's say, from a German perspective, for me, it's difficult to follow the FINMA approach to say, okay, we open this a little bit. So I guess we would be more conservative. We would say either it's unregulated and everybody is free to enter on his own risk, or let's say we have to regulate it into its fullest extent so that we have a level playing field between classic investment products, the classic fund business, and the new crypto funds. But this is a kind of a very harsh view that kind of tries to separate between, let's say, the black market and the white market. And the black market, well, of course it exists, and yeah, you can go there if you want.
But I really wonder if Satoshi Nakamoto in 2009, on the 3rd of January, if he would knock on the doors of BaFin, and he would have said, here I am, my name is Satoshi Nakamoto, I would like to issue a new currency, if BaFin would have said, yeah, that's fine. Just a question that I...
The BaFin would have said, fortunately enough, this is not our area of competence, you have to knock elsewhere.
Yeah, I think they would have the same reaction as you did when you wanted to buy stocks, right? They would say it's fine, just go somewhere else. Don't really bother us here, right?
Yeah.
But you know, what is your view? Because if I have the numbers right, we are talking about around about nearly 2,000, let's say 1,600 ICOs or tokens that are out there last year alone. So last year was kind of the year of initial coin offering. In the peak, combined with Ethereum and Bitcoin and the others like Ripple and so on, we had over $700 billion volume on the whole thing. The whole thing is larger in terms of volume than traditional VC money at the moment, or it was, and still is going to it. So how do you see a regulatory body being even able to adapt in that light speed as the market goes?
We just actually talked about this prior to the panel, what the criteria are that the Bundesbank considers it a serious threat to the financial system. And Jochen, feel free to add on that, but my takeaway was that once it hits like a decent percentage of the $100,000 billion that are in the traditional financial systems, like maybe 5 to 10%, we're still a few zeros away from that. So it's still irrelevant in a way, or on the nice-to-have watch list. For us, it's obviously what you said, a very fast-moving space, and but again, also as Jochen says, regulation is not a bad thing, but in my view, it needs to happen in a co-created way, where the lawyers, the people in the crypto industry, the more extreme ones, as well as that are more follow an anarchic approach, as well as the developers, need to come together to talk about these things and how regulation should happen to take the best of both. Because I mean, Bitcoin or blockchain or any kind of coin, some do, but mostly not, came into this world with a making things better approach, and I think that should be valued as well, and piggyback on that, and not come in with a sledgehammer or a squad team, but sit together at the table and be open for these conversations and be open to find something that brings both together.
So you're a positivist, which is good. You're saying, let's talk about it. Most of the things have a common course to do something better, to optimize it, to drive a decentralized environment, and therefore we have to support them.
I mean, that's what drives the industry. There are scams and there are ICOs that shouldn't be included in this discussion, but generally, I think there are great projects and great people that try to think the whole system further, and that should happen on a shared basis, as whether it's on the taxation, whether it's on ICO regulation, whether it's on fund structures and possible new models, those things, I think there is a demand for new forms of these things, and I think the classic institutions like Bundesbank, BaFin, and so on should see and honor that as well. And so, to my experience, there has been an open dialogue going on, especially from our side with the BaFin, and I hope to see this continue more, to come up step by step with. Because I know Germany is not a sandbox country. We're not just going to say, oh, we're doing Gibraltar-style cryptocurrency exchange next to the Deutsche Börse, but at the same time don't want to stand in the way of innovation either. So like, take little cases, take little steps forward, but do it together.
What do you think about, and this is to everybody in this panel, about the issue not only of fraud, but basically about pump and dump schemes? You know, I see in our research we really looked into the generation pattern of investors. So saying, you know, is it kind of a revolutionized investment scheme for the youngsters? Is it a bubble of cryptoners investing in other cryptocurrencies? Or is there something outside this bubble, right? And are those people driven by pure pump and dump, meaning buying and selling high schemes, or are they really looking onto the long run for a traditional, very sustainable and trustworthy investment? So how do you see the market in the moment? Of course, you I guess, has a very specific mindset about it, and maybe you start and then we argue with him.
I have difficulties in picturing, let's say, an investment in cryptocurrencies as something like a long-term stable investment you would recommend, let's say, to widows and orphans as a store of value for the next 10 years. I have really difficulties in seeing this, because if you look at the intrinsic value of such a cryptocurrency, it's extremely low, if not zero, because the intrinsic value in a way may constitute in its usability as means of payments, in its ability to create the trust of others over a sustained period of time. And if I then take Bitcoin, just because it's the most prominent example, the governance of Bitcoin is shady at best. You have elements of debasing Bitcoins. Of course, we don't call it debasing, we call it fork, but the difference, I would say, is just the semantics. And we have this issue of trust. And the issue of trust goes, let's say, beyond the law. It also includes, let's say, the banking system. In this case, the intermediaries around the Bitcoin. You don't need only to think about Bitcoin, also think about the whole ecosystem. And is this really a trustworthy ecosystem? I have my serious doubts here. And as long as this is, how to say, I would call it private, and as long as it's small, we can ignore that. We can say, okay, why not? Everybody can try. And also, as long as there is no danger to financial stability. And danger to financial stability, I would assume, when banks start to invest heavily, or when, let's say, banks start offer you as an investor to substitute your bank deposit for, let's say, a Bitcoin.
Yeah, you said that, in your opinion, crypto assets, and especially Bitcoin, has no intrinsic value. Yeah. So is its intrinsic value zero in your opinion?
Yeah, I would argue it's extremely minimal. I would put it at zero. Yes, we can argue whether it's a little bit more than zero. Yeah.
And why do you think that somebody is paying for one Bitcoin, and we have to see the market cap? Why do you think that the market cap of Bitcoin right now is then something like 150 billion US dollar?
Yeah. I would say at the moment the Bitcoin has two elements going for it. One is what we can call speculation, hype, boom, and the other is, let's say, Bitcoin is a possibility to make transactions outside the legal system. You can circumvent any rules of capital controls. This is the important case for China. You can avoid taxes and those things.
Thanks for the answer.
Yeah, and this is going to go away. Therefore, I think it's not sustainable.
The 2 points that you mentioned are completely wrong. Because when over the course of 9 years,
almost 10 even.
Thanks. When over the course of almost 10 years, people value a asset and you said it's volatile. Yeah.
It's volatile, yeah.
The euro is not volatile, but it's rising in value down. Whereas Bitcoin its value is rising up. It's pretty simple. So if you ask me where would I put my value, I have a simple answer. And you said, don't put your money into Bitcoin because the government is shady. I had to count all the arguments you mentioned, but I want to keep it really simple. I think what we here see is a governance where we can speak and freely address our opinion on the governments. Can you speak about the governance of the euro? No, it was forced upon you. I have to pay with the euro here. I don't have the choice. And the second thing is that now we have, the question is, I assume that you think the governance in Bitcoin is not optimal because there is a lot of discussion. That's a feature, not a bug. We have a discussion here, and we solved this discussion, the scaling debate. We don't have scaling right now, and that's a great issue. And the second error in thinking you have is Bitcoin is a payment. Bitcoin is not a payment right now. Bitcoin is a store of value. And it achieves one great goal, that you can store your personal value outside of the banking system, but in a legal way. When you put your cash in the bank and the Deutsche Bank defaults, you're fucked. You're really fucked because nobody pays when the Deutsche Bank defaults. And if you believe in this narrative that the euro is stable and the eurozone stands behind this currency, I better believe in a currency that is backed by mathematics and by science than by a government that is inflating the currency in a rate that I cannot control.
I think in the really long run, it is a clash of systems, right? We have a traditional, learned, centralized system which is not bad, by the way, which works and worked and will work, and maybe we have a parallel system that will prove itself. It already proved in terms of numbers over the short and long run on how people adapt to it. I just see a generational shift at the moment. And since kind of the old belief of trusted value-driven money is now exchanged somehow within an option on cryptocurrencies, if they are able to exchange in goods, I don't know if you can buy something with Bitcoin. But it is a storing value. And as you said, Bitcoin is the internet of money. It is not a coin. The whole system of calling it a coin is wrong in the beginning, because it is a system of inter-exchanging trust in a value-based society and environment. So, back to the red chair.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is, I mean, I agree that Bitcoin has been here for 9-10 years, and it's the first and only system we know of, financial system, that's been running with nobody going home at 4 p.m. That's technically stable. Even the best e-commerce sites or whatever have some downtime off, even if it's just 0.0 something % out of the day or week. So that in itself is a massive effort for a system that's been running continuously for the last 10 years without somebody coordinating it, but by certain entities being incentivized to exactly do their job. So I agree with that argument. And the point that I want to add to what Jochen said about scams and how ICOs are treated or cryptocurrencies if they're a store of value or money. So my point is, and these are two takeaways from Davos basically, that in a way it's tokens to me are stores of value. The crypto and blockchain is the internet of value, and that value is you yourself. Think about not only as money, take money completely out of the equation. This is just something that happens to be tangible to to us as humans of this world that you can do something with money, but just because money is a store of value, and just because we are decentralized, we don't have to be disorganized. So if you think the people pump and dump or so, then it's our job to govern each other in a decentralized system. So in a way you're saying if we all pump and dump, that means we as people, as our, like I'm an asset, my thoughts are an asset, where I invest is an asset. You might trust that asset or not. You might consider if I take myself and put it into token pieces, would you invest in it, would you trust in it? That's the way to, the view of thinking, to perspective to approach what blockchain, blocks, tangles, graphs can do. And so I think it's unfair to say that our generation pumps and dumps. That's not the thing. It's humans. It's what do we do with this freedom? We need to make sure we watch each other what we do. It's not a general problem, and it's completely unrelated to money. It's a lot on a more systematic level, and then on a more human and socioeconomic level as well. So it's just the experiment to find this out, how to make it work. But to me, it's very separate from money. And yes, there are bad actors, but I can find them and talk to them and be like, look, it's great that you earned a lot of money with it. Do you also want to support better projects? Or it's like motivating your employees. It's finding what drives these people and making sure we all go in the right direction with it, while making money or not, however you define money. Like even for us as investors in crypto industry, we don't even say, oh, this converts to $20 million or euros. We just say, how many ether do you put in or take out? It's not even about which money it is. It's hey, we believe in Ethereum the most because it's currently used for all ICOs. It has the highest value of participating in the blockchain world. I'm just making an example, not saying that's the case, but so that's why we want to increase our reserves in Ether and not in euros or dollars. So, but that's obviously a very personal decision as well, where you believe that has the highest value to be used or so on. But yeah.
Could I respond on Please. 2 points to Thorsten? Yeah? First, maybe on the availability. My job is to make sure that the backbone of the German payment system has no downtime at all. 99.8 is not good enough for us. Yeah, we go for 100%, and but that's just a side issue. The other issue about, let's say, economics of money, economics of, let's say, payments. It's extremely beneficial from an economic perspective to have, let's say, one currency instead a multitude of currencies, because this makes, let's say, the exchange in the economy so much more simple if we don't have any exchange rates at all. And you can look at this through history and you will find that for the sake of having one currency, economies and societies have been prepared to suffer quite a bit, had been prepared to tolerate, let's say, bad monetary policy, if you want, had been willing to tolerate inflation, because still in the overall balance, it was, let's say, beneficial to have one means of payment, to have something like legal tender. We had phases in the US where we had competing regional dollars issued by banks or by states. It exactly went nowhere. We had in Germany, we had this situation before 1875 and the big industrial revolution, the Gründerjahre in the 1870s. They needed one, let's say, one Deutschmark or one Reichsmark, which was the currency at the time. So I would argue that, let's say, for the economy and society at large, legal tender is not so bad an idea. And now, of course, you can say, well, maybe Bitcoin can be the next legal tender, or another cryptocurrency could morph that direction. And if this is the path chosen, you need, let's say, governance. You need transparent governance. You may not like the ECB Council, but its minutes get published. you don't know, let's say, how this works in Bitcoin.
Any higher transparency and governance structure as Bitcoin right now. But the thing is, what you said is, I understand your point here, but already what Miriam mentioned, which was a great point, and the critique was, we have now pump and dumps, and this governance is shady, you said. We have open source structures, so you can read every line of code. You have a governance structure which is clearly detailed in the protocol. And where I see, again, nation state failing is not educating people, but restricting innovation. This is the important point. When you say pump and dumps should be illegal, or this should be illegal, or ICO should be illegal, I think everybody should make his own experience and learn and have the chances to learn about the financial system. You can finish which in Germany we call Abitur, you can make the Abitur without understanding a single point about money. You can make the Abitur without understanding something about the economic system. You learn about people from Greece that are long dead, you can learn a lot about history, which is faked. And the thing is that the important stuff that drives the world, the economy, is not learned. So the nation state does things he does wrong, and on the other hand, he blocks things which are innovative and which are good. And your point about having one currency, let the market decide. We have 1,500 currencies. We have Dogecoin. People love Dogecoin. People love Bitcoin. I would not store my value in Dogecoin. And people have Litecoin and whatever. So why not the market decide which currencies we have? Why do we have to need a nation state that dictates which currency we should use?
I have no problem with currency competition. I would just argue it's beneficial to have one legal tender. You can have Bitcoins at the side if you want. Be my guest, yeah, why not?
I would say you have to diversify, right? You will have a legal tender, which is common for your daily usage in terms of buying, maybe differentiate investing, buying and interacting with each other. The other thing is what I wanted to mention, I've seen a lot of questions there, but that we have in Germany a thing called the Kapitalanlegerschutzgesetz. We have a very, very strong Verbraucherschutzgesetz. So we are basically coming from regulation, which is maybe overtaking care sometimes in terms of the citizen, but it's on a good matter. They're not doing it to, first of all, limit the opportunities. They are doing it out of experience, and maybe sometimes they're kind of overreacting. Could be, right? But I think the path will be, you see there are two sides and there is a lot of euphoria here, and basically I think the only path can be to work together, doing something like accelerators like the Deutsche Börse is doing, that the Bundesbank is part of, learning a lot, doing like things like the Goldman Sachs people having their kind of centralized, decentralized blockchain to learn about the technology. Because understanding comes from, first of all, learning from each other, and then the next level can be achieved in some order or not. So let's take one of the questions, please, out of the Slido there, and it's I see with 7 points. It's about energy, because this is what's coming through the media, I guess. So the question here is, what about the massive usage of energy in production, keeping systems running, in reference to Bitcoin, I guess, and the actual status quo? When will the eco side be addressed when speaking of the future of money? So what's about the, and maybe it's more technical and more to you guys, you know, is it the status quo and we will burn every fossil fuel to generate
what we
Bitcoin?
have in the space is it's fresh and it's unregulated. So we have a phenomenon which is called FUD here, yeah? So it's called fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And this is spread throughout the media every day. And each time we have a new narrative. 2 years ago we had the narrative, it's the blockchain, not Bitcoin. Before we had the narrative, Bitcoin, just joking. Now we have the narrative, it's burning so much energy. Didn't it burn energy to print euro, to have the financial system, to operate skyscraper, to have somebody bringing out money in a truck and driving it someplace? This is also energy. And by Bitcoin, the energy is well spent because it saves. It's not energy destroyed. The energy that goes into the Bitcoin network saves and secures the Bitcoin network. And further, when we look in the future, we will get now the Lightning Network, which will make with the same amount of energy millions of transactions possible per second. So again, don't fall for the FUD. Make your own thoughts about what you read and what you listen to in the media, because it may be that the media is not that open and doesn't reflect all the facts about the new advantages.
Could I just react here? First, maybe one figure. Let's say we have made a calculation that if you compare a Bitcoin transaction with a SEPA credit transfer, a klassisch Überweisung, yeah, it's, let's say, a SEPA credit transfer takes 11 watts seconds. The Bitcoin takes 634 kilowatt hours. So it's 680,000 times the energy. And of course, there's a reason for it. And the reason is, if you really want to be an open system where everybody can be potentially a node, you need a mechanism of consensus that is very much, let's say, elaborate and consuming, energy consuming.
But this is this wrong point of information, because what you're calculating is not the banking systems, not the energy a bank uses.
Yes,
you're just computing. No,
yes,
no, that's
But I mean, you have to account for not just the
could I make one more point? In the banking system, there is one kind of, say, structural element that is, in order to be a bank, you need a banking license, i.e. the exchange that happens only among trusted parties. And as the parties are trusted, you can minimize the time for validation, i.e. you don't need any energy for transactions between those trusted parties. The very moment you go away from the concept of trusted parties, you need to do more, sad as it is. Yeah.
I just want to add one thing, so just 1 second here. So okay, we can't argue that Bitcoin uses a lot of energy, so it's as much as Denmark at the moment, and it will grow. The energy need of Bitcoin will grow and grow and grow and grow, and is massive. And this is a problem, definitely. So what I think, or how I think about this is, Bitcoin is like a source for optimization, optimize a lot of things. So it's an optimization system. And if you look at how chips around Bitcoin, how to mine Bitcoin evolved over time, so with less amount of energy, getting more security, I think it will also happen on the energy part. So Bitcoin forces us as a society to think about how we can harness free existing energy. So there are a lot of free existing energy sources out there, and we will be forced to find more efficient way to harness them, like wind or water or solar, for example. So this is my opinion here. So I just wanted to give my 2 cents here.
Thanks for coming out. Just stay there. Okay. We have this chair anyway reserved for you. So
one thing you have to keep in mind is everything that has to do with blockchain, not just the ICOs. You're public from day one. If you run an ICO, everybody knows what's going on behind the scenes before it happens already. The same is with news like energy. If you look at a traditional startup, until you know what happened before it became awesome, this is not shared with you. This stays between the founders and investors. In blockchain, like, we're so new, but we are watching it as it happens and as it improves. So bad news today might already be different news tomorrow, and so on. So yeah, it's good to have that grain of salt when reading those things too, plus doing your own research, because it's
I know we are standing between you and lunch, and we just want to have a final question, which, for my understanding, is even greater than just saying that's a new money or that's a new philosophy. We are very fortunate not only to live in Europe and in Germany and to sit on the stage and to live our lives as we live it. Imagine there are more than 5 billion people out there who don't have access to constant banking services, and there are more than 3.2 billion people out there who don't have any bank account or any bank relationship at all. So what do you think when I pitch you that this force of a currency, maybe called Bitcoin, a cryptocurrency, can by definition not hold, because digitalization, especially in those countries, is very far, sometimes farther than our Breitbandausbau can have it. So there are people out in Senegal where we have a project. We're sitting outside Dakar and having 4G with no problem. When I'm going to Geretsried, I have a big problem. I'm sitting on edge or a zero signal. So there is digitalization and there is smartphone access. So imagine everybody is a bank. There is no bank. Everybody is able to transfer basic interactions and basic accumulation of wealth in terms of savings and basic participations called crowd sales to projects being involved in regional, national, or very systemic matters like energy for the country without having a bank. So don't you think that is the main core of what we call a Bitcoin or crypto revolution that is driving us besides all these specific, very national problems?
Absolutely. I think that what you described right now are two steps in the evolution of humankind. First of all, somebody that is unbanked, what you said, that has no possibility to have a bank account, what we know everybody has here. They have now a bank account. They are their own bank. They are their own Swiss bank. Since a couple of months, we have a satellite in space. And this satellite streams the blockchain. It streams the blockchain to countries and places that have no internet. So they are not only their own Swiss bank, they now can have this service at places where we don't have normal electricity. So what you say is a great point, and I think it's a great outlook for the future. And it gives us freedom as a civilization and society here in Europe, but also in the undeveloped countries, sure.
What's your view on that?
Yeah, I have 2 points. One point is, my bank is here. It works in euro. It works without blockchain. It works with the traditional banking system. So when it comes to access, yes, digitalization is the key. Whether it goes into a crypto token or into a real currency doesn't really matter so much. And the other point I would like to make is, if everybody who owns Bitcoin would be actually a node in the system, I could relate to that project. I could understand that you want to disintermediate, that you would want to get rid of banks, even of central banks, although as a Bundesbanker I'm not allowed to say this. But for the sake of the argument, yes, I can understand that you want to get rid of banks, but now you are using Bitcoin exchanges. Are you crazy?
I have my bank here, and it cannot be censored, which is even better.
Maybe last verse from you, and
okay.
Last verse from you, Daniel, and
yeah. I totally agree. I mean, if you really want to get rid of intermediaries, it's important to run your own node. I mean, I am running my own nodes. I run in 2 nodes actually. So this is of course the reason why we also had this debate about bigger blocks and smaller blocks. So it is really important for everyone to be able to run his own nodes. In my opinion, and the opinion of many others, as you can see here, who's even not convinced of the crypto space at all, or not in a way like we are here. So yeah, I can't add any more.
Miriam, it's up to you to leave those people out for great food.
Great. Well, nice to have you. I hope we can take the discussion with the existing systems further and take those learnings, because especially when it comes to forms of money in real life, how it's organized, there is a history that's as long as mankind of how we worked with money, whether it's in some local, I don't know, farm communities or bigger statewide countries or powerful empires. And I think it's important that money history per se gets shared more with everyone, so we can have a good discussion of what works and what doesn't, because just looking at blockchain alone from the technical side is too limiting, and it's too complex to foresee all of these things, and we need to look at what has worked in history and combine it with what can be used for the future, and that's why I look forward to continuing dialogue, and I think you're welcome to join as well in whichever form and approaches, so that's what I'm excited for, and hope you're excited for lunch now.